felt like a failure because I, through my actions, whether consciously or unconsciously, had created in his mind a belief that he could never please me, a belief that he had to walk in my footsteps, a belief that regardless of what he did, I was going to always say, it's not good enough, I do more, do more.
Ever feel like you suck at this job? Motherhood, I mean. Have too much anxiety and not enough patience? Too much yelling, not enough play? There's no manual, no village, no guarantees. The stakes are high. We want so badly to get it right. But this is survival mode. We're just trying to make it to bedtime. So if you're full of mom guilt, your temper scares you, you feel like you're screwing everything up, and you're afraid to admit any of those things out loud, this podcast is for you. This is Failing Motherhood. I'm Danielle Bettman, and each week we'll chat with a mom ready to be real, sharing her insecurities, her fears, her failures, and her wins. We do not have it all figured out. That's not the goal. The goal is to remind you, you are the mom your kids need. They need what you have, you are good enough, and you're not alone. I hope you pop in earbuds, somehow sneak away, and get ready to hear some hope from the trenches. You belong here, friend. We're so glad you're here. Hey, Danielle here. Parenting is the hardest job in the world. Pandemics make it even harder. We are under immense pressure right now to be there for our kids as they weather these uncertain times. How important is it to you to extend your patience and learn new strategies that help your kids feel understood and safe in your home right now? I have a gift for you. Go to parentingwholeheartedly.com/emotions to download a free 5-page workbook teaching you exactly what to do to walk your child experiencing a tantrum or a meltdown back to calm. It includes a printable to put up on your wall to use with them. If you're not on my email list yet, friend, you need to be. I want to equip you to be the parent you want to be during this time. So go to parentingwholeheartedly.com/emotions to download yours today. Now, let's start the show. Welcome to Failing Motherhood. My name is Danielle Bettman, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Sue Collins. Dr. Sue is an author, professional speaker, and greatness life coach. She speaks on topics related to resilience, spirituality, and transformation. Her primary clients are women 25 to 45, seeking to identify and align with their purpose and live their best life. She's the author of Return to Self, 5 Steps to Spiritual and Emotional Freedom. Dr. Sue is also a spiritual teacher, ordained metaphysical minister, energy healer, and meditation facilitator. She hosts a private meditation group called Consciousness Rising, Conversations with Dr. Sue. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi there. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
I am good. I'm excited you're here too. Have you ever felt like you were failing motherhood?
Oh, I can't count the number of times for sure. I think it comes with the territory, so absolutely.
It does. Welcome to the club. Now, you have a son, correct?
Yes.
And how old is he now?
My son is 35. He'll be 36 at the end of this month.
Okay. So you're speaking from a place of hindsight then, being able to kind of look back, and hindsight can be 20/20. So we have a lot that we can learn from you.
Thank you. I'm excited to share.
And I really ascribe to the notion that some things, some aspects of parenting can almost be better enjoyed in hindsight. You know, when you're not trudging through some of the seasons and phases and getting to look back at, oh, their cute chubby cheeks and all the fun things that they used to do.
I agree. For sure. I totally agree.
So I can't wait to dive into what some of that wisdom is and how you've grown and changed and be able to look back at some of your choices and decisions. So let's start from the top. What did early motherhood look like for you?
I came to motherhood probably relatively later than many people do because I had already started a career, and my son was born when I was 34. I had just finished law school. So one of the first things I remember about my son, the experience is I was studying for the bar exam, and I would have my baby in one arm and my books in the other, and he'd cry, and I'd go, "Not now, baby, please, please."
Oh man, talk about overwhelm.
And I think, my mom would say, "The child's going to think his name is Not Now, baby." So that was one of my first enjoyable but interesting experiences because he was born, right at just as I was studying for the bar. But
Wow.
I was a single parent. I didn't start out as a single parent. I divorced my son's father when he was 18 months old. And so it was quite a struggle, just finishing law school, being destitute as you often are when you come out with all of the school loans, trying
Mm.
to get a job and getting jobs that didn't pay enough to survive, and not having family in the area where I lived. It was very, very difficult trying to navigate all of those issues. And I was very fortunate to have at that point a couple of good friends who would help me with childcare. And one of the jobs I had at that time was legal advisor for a major police department. And when they would receive a call out for an emergency, then I had to respond. And so sometimes I would have to, someone during the middle of the night, someone would have to come and get my child, or if I couldn't find anybody else to take him, then I would have to take him with me on the TAC bus while we were there on the scene. Of course, those buses they're staged away from the incident, but a mom does what a mom has to do because you got to work in order to take care of your kids. So the first
Yeah.
years were very, very stressful, learning how to navigate being a mother and working working in the profession that I was working in. So it was very difficult, very difficult.
Yeah, and I'm sure a divorce on top of having all of that and a toddler just added to the challenges.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I don't think that any person, at least I did not get married with the thought that it's not going to be my forever person or my forever relationship. And so we had been together for 8 years. And obviously there were signs that this probably isn't going to work. But like many of us, I kept trying and trying to make it work, and it didn't work. And I realized that my plan was to leave the relationship, and that when I finished law school. But when I finished law school, I was pregnant.
Mm,
So it's like, what do you do? And what I
yeah.
did was make the decision to get married to a person that I probably should not have. And within 18 months, we were at that space of it's over,
Wow.
because it was really over before, it was
Yeah.
over before, and I was just trying to make it work.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
heartbreaking.
yeah, pretty much, pretty much. I, um, I made the decision to leave my husband because I woke up one morning, and I'm just going to get real raw with your listeners because, that's who I am and that's the
That's what
space
we're
that
here
I
to do.
operate in. I woke up one morning. We had gone to bed that night sleeping in the same bed, but I woke up the next morning, and he had actually moved his clothes out into another room.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, okay, this is where we are. And from that point on, he started to communicate with me through my child. Now, my child's 18 months old, so he can't speak, but he would say things like, well, tell your mom I said this, or tell your mom I said that. And then he also would say to my son, if I reached for him, he'd say, run, run from your mom, run, run.
Oh,
And he'd
no.
say, don't let her hug you. Don't let her. And I said, no, this absolutely will not work ever.
Mm-mm.
This is, you will not turn my child against me. This is not cute. This is not funny. No.
Good
And
for you.
that really, for me, was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, no. I think that, just really being personal, had I not had a child, I probably would have stayed in the relationship longer, because in that mindset where I was, yes, it was abuse, but he didn't put his hands on me. So I didn't recognize it as the psychological abuse.
Mm.
What I did recognize was that he was my son, the most prized person in the world to me. He was turning my son against me, and I absolutely would not, under any circumstances, allow that. And that was what God used to get my attention, to let me know this relationship is over and you need to leave. But I was
Yeah.
afraid to leave. I was afraid to leave while he was there. So because he traveled, he was an auditor for the state that we lived in. And because he traveled, I waited until I made my plans while he was away. I found an apartment. I didn't have money, but God just stepped in and people gave me stuff so that I could actually furnish it. And then
Wow.
when he left and went out of town, I moved everything that I didn't touch anything that was his, but I moved all of my personal stuff and my child's stuff out. And at that point, it wasn't a lot. We had our clothes, we had the furniture that we had been given. My son's belongings were in a cardboard box. Our bed was a mattress that was on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
But even that was better because I would have rather have my child grow up in an environment that was filled with love, no arguments, no hateful back and forth, none of that not being turned against me.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather that we grow up in a loving environment than to grow up in an environment where, yes, we stayed together. Yes, we honored our on paper marriage vows, but we hated each other. And
Yeah.
so I thought that my son would be more broken and damaged by that than by me struggling, getting on the struggle bus as a single parent. And that's what it was initially.
Yeah. Good for you. That is so hard to know
Yeah,
that you're doing the right thing, and that fierce mama bear instinct does come out when we're acting in our child's best interest. And ultimately, it
absolutely.
will give us the power to make the best decision. Even if we never would have done it for only ourselves, we will do it for our child because we'll do what it
Yes,
takes.
yes.
So good for you, but I'm sure that didn't make things immediately easier.
No, it made things it made things very hard. It
Yeah.
made things very hard, because even though we were together and we in times were difficult in the personal relationship, two incomes are better than one when it
Yes.
comes to living, right? And so because I had nothing when I left and I had just started a job and it wasn't a job that paid a whole lot. I mean, when I finished law school back in the at that point it was 19, my son was born in 84, I finished law school in 83, and at that point to start to work as an assistant public defender, I was making less money coming out of law school than I made going in.
Ugh,
And I was
that's not
making,
right.
the next year I transferred jobs to become an assistant prosecutor. That didn't make a whole lot more. So for 2 years I struggled. One of the last things that my husband said to me is, "You're never going to be anything. You're never going to make it without me." And that was kind of his parting words. And
Ugh.
so I was determined that no, I'm going to show you that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Despite all of the difficulty, at the end of 1 year, I purchased my home.
What?
I
Look
purchased
at
my home
you.
in a really nice neighborhood for my son and I, and that's where he grew up. Um, but
Wow.
so in 2 years, I had a job as the legal advisor for a major urban police department, and then my at that point my income increased, everything changed. But those first 2 years were struggle. But even so, I still within that I managed to get us a home, and I put my son in private school. Um, so for me, everything was as a here's where the overindulgence came. I was so protective because of the situation that I just described that we came out of. Because I knew how important what my son's father was to my son, then I overcompensated. I gave him everything that he could want. He had so many toys. He had so many of anything that he'd play with them for a few minutes and discard them, you know. Um, for Christmas, I would buy him enough toys to supply a family of I don't know how many,
Yeah.
totally overindulgence. And then I would have to take them because at that point, he was still just playing with wrappers and boxes and little things, right? But I'm buying big things and all of this stuff because I just felt that, and I don't think that I thought it
Mm-hmm.
in consciously.
Consciously. Yeah.
I just think that it was compensating for the fact that his dad wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at age 4, he said to me, well, when dad comes to live with us, it's like, oh, no, baby. And so
Oh.
I had to sit him down and have that talk. And what do you say to a 4-year-old?
Yeah. So
Who
did that feel like failure to your mama heart?
It did. It did. Girl, you gonna make me cry up in here.
I know. I know it's hard.
Yes, it did. Because I so wanted him to grow up in a 2-parent home.
Yeah.
I so wanted that for him.
Oh.
But it just wasn't. It just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
Um, and so I sat him down that day and I said, um, your mom and your dad, we're always family. We're always connected because of you. Um, but our lives changed and it's just it's not possible for us to live together. I said, your father loves you. I believe he loves you and he loves you as best he can. And I love you as best I can. And so we're both going to do our very best to take care of you, but we're not going to ever live together like that again.
Mm.
And he just cried.
Oh.
Just,
That is
oh,
such a tender moment. That's so
I didn't know you were going to make me cry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, but the memory of that never goes away. And yes, I felt like a failure because I couldn't give him what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that it wasn't good for him,
Mm-hmm.
for us to be in that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't good for me. And I was so right because ultimately his father got involved with drugs. He wasn't on drugs that I was aware of when we were together, but he got involved in drugs. He lost his job. He lost everything. I mean,
Oh
he was
no.
a professional man. He was an auditor for the state of Florida. And he traveled, and it's like I still today don't understand what happened. He's deceased now, but I don't know how he lost his way.
Yeah.
Um, I found out the day that I moved out, I as I was going through the drawers to make sure I'd gotten all of my belongings, I found that there was drawers and drawers full of tickets from the racetrack, where he was gambling. I didn't know he was a compulsive gambler. It's like
Oh
the
no.
person that I thought I knew that I was with all that time. He had a whole different side of him that I didn't know. And, some of your audience listening to this may say, well, how could you not know? How could you not know?
Mm.
He just didn't show up that way in my life.
Yep.
A part of those 8 years that we were together before we were married, I lived in a different city. And then when I moved to where we were in Tallahassee, I moved in with him, and I didn't see that part. He had once a month that I was aware of. He would go to his uh, boys' night, and they would play poker. People do that all the time. That's not a sign of a compulsive gambler.
Yeah.
But if there was a whole different side, a whole other aspect that was so much deeper, and I didn't even begin to see that until I opened the drawer and there are all these tickets, and I opened another drawer and it's full too, and I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do with that. Um, but at that point, I had already made the decision to leave. It was like I don't know this person, but I know
Mm-hmm.
that the situation is not, it's not good for me. And
Yeah.
what I discovered when in discovering those tickets just reaffirmed that. And so from that point on, it's like after I moved, I don't know what went on in his life, but he I know he loved his child,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't show up as a good parent.
Ugh.
And his there were times when he would promise my son, our son, that he was going to come and get him. My son would see, he so loved his dad. If his dad told him that he was going to come, if if it's Saturday and he said, I'll be here to get you next week on Sunday, my son would pack his bag that the day that he told him, pack his bag. And he'd have it there waiting all week, all week. And then on Saturday or Sunday, he would show up.
Oh.
And and you see a kid that's standing there waiting and waiting and waiting, and you know he's not going to come. And he says, Mama, where's dad? Where's my daddy coming? And I would make those phone calls. He wouldn't answer the phone. Or if he did, he'd say, you can't make me be the person you want me to be. Just
Oh.
wouldn't show up. So, yes, I bent over backward to give my son everything, everything,
Mm-hmm.
everything that I thought I could give him
Yeah.
because I didn't know what else to
Understandably.
do.
Right. You didn't have control over any of that. So, of course, you're going to spin that into these are the things that I can control
Yeah.
on my side of what I'm providing for him. So, I'll up the ante.
Um,
Understandably.
yeah.
Yeah. Your heart is
So,
breaking for your little boy.
so,
Oh.
I bought him everything. I took him everywhere,
Mhm.
and I didn't hold him responsible for much of anything other than to go to school.
Mhm.
Go to school, do your very best. Do the best you can do.
Mhm.
And I share this now because it ties into one of the stories that I shared when I wrote in to you that,
Yeah. Cuz now you have the ability to look back
yeah,
and say if that's what it looked like in
yeah.
1990 in 2020, how does that play out?
In 2020, my son is a disabled vet. He served a tour in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And it is unfortunate for those of us who, the children who go to war, because they have very limited services coming back
Mm.
and they see so much. My son has never yet been able to talk to me, and I don't press that about what his experience was like, but just I pick up things from conversations that I overhear, or things that he may share on Facebook. He allows me to be in his Facebook group. Uh,
Mm.
so, so I just pick up things like that from what it was like, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty. Um, and so we last year, this time, almost exactly this time, actually, I had gone to a conference I'm in Atlanta, so I'd gone to a conference in San Diego. And as I was getting ready to board the plane, I got a text from my son saying, I woke up in the hospital. They tell me that I've had a heart attack. They tell me that two major arteries were blocked. And that was the message.
What?
That was it. And I I'm literally standing in the line to board the plane to return to Atlanta. And so I get here, and as quickly as I can, I'm on the phone with him. But when a person is in a depressed state, then there really is no life in their body. There's no life in their inner, and there's no energy. Everything, the conversation was just totally flat. And I said, I'll be there. I'll be there as quickly as I can get there. Well, I don't drive anymore on the highway. And so I took a flight and I just said I would stay there I'd be with him for a week. And when I got there, and I walked in, he opened the door and I saw my son and I realized how deep his depression was.
Mm.
And I looked at his house and the conditions were, let's say that they were not good. And let's say that they were indicative of a person who had been in a deep state of depression for a very long time.
Oh, wow.
And there had been times when I would reach out to him and he would talk, but very, very little, Well, my son's an introvert, so I didn't put a whole lot of thought about that. But when I saw where he was living and how he was living, I realized that there was more that I just missed it. I just missed it. So fast forward, I'm there visiting and I said, well, let's go to the store so we can get some food, because he didn't really have anything there. And I'm vegetarian, so what he had was meat. I don't eat any meat products at all. I'm closer to being vegan than I am just vegetarian. So I said, well, let's go to, is there a Publix? Because that's where I shop. And he said, oh, the bougie store. I said, bougie store? Where the bougie people go. Well, oh, okay. I said, I don't know about that. I'm a simple person. I just know that where I live, there's a Publix and a Kroger. The Kroger is miles away, and the Publix I can walk to if I decide I just want to walk, and pick up an item or two. So I want to go where I'm familiar, right? And so he said, yeah, there's one. So he's driving me to get it. We pull into the parking lot, and I don't even know. I attribute everything that happens like this to divine intervention. We're pulling into the parking lot. He's driving, and I just look at him and I say, why is it that you think you can never please me? And he said, Ma, who can walk in your shoes? And I just kind of, the energy was so strong. The words were so totally unexpected. And I was taken aback. But I knew the energy wasn't one of being angry at me. It was just like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I knew he wasn't attacking me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you're a lawyer, you got a PhD, and then you got all these other degrees, and you've done this. And he just named off, in essence, he named off my resume, my vita, and a college professor. And he just went on. And I'm sitting there just focusing on my breathing, understanding in my mind that he's not attacking you. He's coming from his own space. Just be calm, allow him to express. And when he finished, I said, I am so sorry. Now this, in answer to your question, I felt like a failure. Mm-hmm. I felt like such a failure because it's not that my son didn't think that I loved him. He knows that. I felt like a failure because I, through my actions, whether consciously or unconsciously, had created in his mind a belief that he could never please me, a belief that he had to walk in my footsteps, a belief that regardless of what he did, I was going to always say, it's not good enough, or do more, do more. Oh. And now, mind you, I never said the words, it's not good enough. I never said those words. I only said to him, honey, just do your best. Do your best. What he apparently heard is, your mom has all these degrees. Your mom has all this experience. Your mom has done all of this stuff. Do your best according to mom standards. Do your best. And if this doesn't meet your mom's standards, then it's not good enough. He said, well, Mom, I said, I never told you that you had to walk in my shoes. I never told you that. I don't expect anybody to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But mom, when you say do your best, that's what, you've done all these things. I have to do everything that you've done in order to do my best. I just cried. I'm a crybaby. I'm a
That seems
crybaby.
appropriate in that moment.
I just cried because here is a child that I gave birth to who thinks that he is never going to do or be good enough to please me. Here's a
Oh.
child that I gave birth to who just doesn't really understand that I don't care what you do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what you do. As long as you don't break any laws, as long as you don't hurt anybody, I just love you because I
Yeah.
just love you.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, that's not the message that I conveyed. Somewhere along the line, I made my love conditional on him living up to my standards.
Oh.
And it was so hard to be here there with him that week. It was so hard. I stayed with him for 3 days, and finally I said, I've got to go to a hotel. And I think that that was the best decision for both of us because I think that my presence was causing him more stress. We were trying
Mm.
very hard to have conversations, but they were so strained because I didn't know what to say after that.
Yeah.
And with him being in the state of depression that he was in, and having just come home from the hospital, I didn't want to create more stress. That was probably that was probably one of the hardest years of my life, one of the loneliest years points in my life, because who do you turn to?
Yeah.
Who can you? I'm in a city that even though I lived in that city for 20 years, I have no friends there. Um, I have no one that I wanted to share this part of my life with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to hear the judgment. I didn't want to hear their opinion. This wasn't asking opinion. This was just support my son, support me because this is where we are.
Yeah.
This is where we are. And that was that was a huge I had a huge sense of failure.
Hey friends, Danielle here. I'm so excited to be able to offer you a way to get the help that you so desperately need, like so many of our guests have. I'm a big fan of therapy. As a mom, it's a must-have. Your mental health has a direct effect on your child's mental health. You can't give them what you don't have, and asking for help is a sign of strength. But it's intimidating. I get it, and you have to find childcare, and with COVID, who can even venture out these days? Well, have you heard of BetterHelp? They're a new sponsor of this podcast, and they are here to help. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional counseling done securely online. BetterHelp will assess your needs through a questionnaire and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. Their counselors are legit. Licensed, trained, experienced, and accredited psychologists, marriage and family therapists, clinical social workers, or licensed professional counselors. And BetterHelp is committed to helping you find a good match, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. It's accessible for clients worldwide, and financial aid is available. As a special offer for Failing Motherhood listeners, you get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/wholeheartedly. That's betterhelp.com/wholeheartedly to get the help you need today. Your kids need you whole. Okay, back to the show. And looking back, could you draw and connect any dots or see where you could have done something differently? Because looking back and you having those regrets isn't productive. It's not helpful. You can only show up differently today and, repair relationships for the future. But when it comes to advice for listeners, where do you feel like you would love to go back and do something differently or say something differently?
I think that I think that one of the things I don't know necessarily, in honesty, I don't know that I would have given him fewer things or exposed him to fewer things. I
Hmm.
probably would still do that. What I would do differently is always, I would ask him more, what is it that you want? I would encourage him more specifically to pursue his own interest. I would not, I wouldn't have an open-ended statement of do your best because that leaves for the child to fill in what that means.
Hmm.
And when you have a person who has achieved as much as I've achieved, I didn't realize this at the time, but when you have a person who has achieved as much as I've achieved, then that says to a child, do your best. Who's setting the standard? I'm
Hmm.
setting the standard. I'm
Hmm.
setting the standard. And, just to share very briefly what that standard is, I've got 5 degrees, 5 advanced education degrees.
Wow.
I'm working on 2 more. I,
Like you do. Yeah.
I I spent more than 40 years in various positions in the criminal justice system, starting out as a correctional officer, law enforcement officer, investigator. I've had my own business as a law enforcement trainer. I've served had my own business as um, an expert witness looking at use of force, police use of force issues.
Hmm.
I have trained for some of the elite law enforcement organizations around the country. I have worked I mean, I'm an retired professor from a major university. That's just a little bit. My vita is
No big
22
deal.
pages, right?
Yeah. No pressure.
And no pressure to a child who, even though, I mean, at that point, I hadn't accomplished all of those things, but I had accomplished at least half of what I've just shared.
Yeah.
And so to say to a child, do your best, who's he looking at? Children look up to their parents.
Hmm.
Parents are the ones who, whether you're conscious or unconscious of it, you're setting the standard. I would have been more specific in terms of trying to help him identify what is it that you love? What gives you joy? What gives you pleasure?
Yeah.
Even at the point where he is playing with toys, um, what is it about these toys that you like? What are the games that you like and why do you like them? And I would explore that to try to help him identify early on the things that he liked and then to try to direct him into those so that he's able to set his own standard and also even to connect him with people and take him to events based on what he likes. My
Mm.
son spent a lot of time because I didn't have childcare. My son spent a lot of time in city commission meetings with me and other meetings with law enforcement officers
Hmm.
because that's where he had to be. My son was I had an office that had an outer area as well as my inner office. My son would come home from school and he came to the police department.
Hmm.
So that's do your best. Do your best by whose standards?
Yeah.
My failure is that I didn't not that I would set lower standards for me,
Right.
but that I would interact more with him and try to find out what it is that he was interested in and put him in places and situations and contact with people to help draw out those so that there would be more balance.
Hmm. And help him find who he is
Yes,
and care about the things that he cares about and help him kind of see that
right,
his path is a totally different path than
right,
your path. And that's
right.
great. And celebrate
And
that.
I think that I just another failure. I implicitly thought that he would get that,
Hmm.
but you can't leave that for, especially with young children, you can't make that assumption. You
Yeah.
got to draw it out. You got to draw it out. You've got to ask them. You've got to encourage them. You've got to look and see, well, even when they can't tell you what their interests are, what are they drawn to?
Hmm.
What are they drawn to?
Hmm.
Because when you focus on their behavior in terms of what they're drawn to, that gives you the answer to what is it that my child likes.
Yeah.
That gives you an indication of how you can begin to support them in their journey as they attempt to discover for themselves what it is that what I love and what I'm here to do.
Yeah. And our job as a parent is so complex. It's not like we're already doing a million other things of trying to teach
Right,
them and provide for them and protect them and all of that. But at the same time, it is our unique role to help them get to know who they are and learn who they are, because every kid is so unique and a completely different individual than even a sibling. And we do have
sure.
to kind of customize everything we're doing so that it is aligning and meeting their individual needs, which is exhausting, not easy.
It is
Um,
not easy.
when we're stressed out and handling all of our adult life things at the same time. But yeah, if we just even have a little inkling of intentionality, of being more explicit and not making the assumption that they're getting and driving home, the message that we hope that they're learning. Their brain just wants to fill in the gaps and come up with their own, assumptions and solutions of what that means. And sometimes their brains do not draw the right conclusions, and we can't, at the end of the day, completely control their perceptions, because they are a totally different person with a totally different brain and worldview and lens, and they're taking in things that weren't ever intended that way. But at the end of the day, we want to know that we did the best we can, and we'll
Sure.
never be perfect, though. Like, we just never will. And I'm sure
No,
that there's going to be some messages that I'm sending to my kids with 100% innocent, loving intentions that they take a totally different way.
yeah. One of the things I've learned, one of the things I've learned is that, we pass on to our children what we learned. Even when it's a negative and we want it to be
Mm,
a positive, we still pass it on. I passed on this thing about education because that's what was passed on to me.
mm,
Um, for me, my mom was was uneducated. My mom also was a single parent.
mm,
And for her, it was so important that we get an education. I have 9 siblings, and all of us, as a single, my mom had a third grade education, but all of us have advanced degrees, with the
wow.
exception of one, and he's a master bridge builder. So what I got was education is the key. Education is the key to your future, to advancement,
Yep.
to achieving all of those things that you want to achieve, whatever your goals may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that that's important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that right now we live in an era where the focus in my family was on college education. College is not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Education is for everyone. But there's so many vehicles and so many ways to self-educate. I love YouTube. I call it YouTube University
Yeah,
because
it is.
there's so many things that you can learn there. And
Uh-huh.
there's so many things that you can learn from the Google Institute.
Yep.
And I think that, going back to when your children are little and they, through their behavior, they show you what it is that they like. Don't get caught up in, but you got to have a college degree. Don't get caught up in that, because you don't. What you have to do is follow your passion. When you follow your passion, that's when you move into the career that you want. That's when my whole thing is about tapping into your greatness.
Mm-hmm.
A parent's greatness is not the child's greatness. And when a parent forces their views on what it takes to be great on the children, then the children oftentimes grow up to be, they may achieve the goals, but they're very unhappy. They're broken people. And they may be broken because they don't know why they're broken, but they're broken because they've been trying to follow a path that's not theirs.
Right. Oh.
And I think of my son. I honestly said to him that day that we were sitting there in the Publix parking lot and I cried. And I just said to him, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. It was never my intention. I thought that I was doing the right thing, but this is what I have to tell you. Now, as a child, you had no choice. But as a young adult, you now get to make your own decisions. And so anything that I may have told you, I thought I was telling you the right thing. But if it is not right for you, please disregard it. You get to
Mm.
choose your own life path.
Yeah.
And so I share that with your listeners because I've never been one to want to undo something that if I could get it right the first time, I wouldn't have to undo it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So if anything that I'm sharing with you can help you on the front end,
Yeah.
like right now, both my son and I have to, we have to, and we have developed a new kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But it was almost like he needed my permission to say, it's okay to be you.
Yeah.
And that's what I told him that day that we sat in the parking lot. Honey, I love you. I'm going to love you no matter what. Do you. I am so sorry that you thought you had to do me.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
Each of us humans, we're spirit in human form. And each of us come here and we have our own path, our own reason for being here on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
It is not, yes, the parent's responsibility is to support and guide and nurture, but not to redirect what God, source, however it is you view the creator. It is not to change what the creator has for that person. And when you
Mm.
try to change that, no one is happy. It's like
Yeah.
you put a bridle on them so that they can't do the work. We're here to do work. It is a work of love. They can't do that work because they're so unhappy and they don't know why. So if you encourage them on the front end to be themselves, then that's what changing this world is all about.
Yeah. Oh, that's
That's
so
what changing it
powerful.
is all about.
Yeah. That permission piece. I really love that you
Yeah.
use that word because when now we become a parent ourselves, I heard a quote by Brene Brown that was like, maybe it was somebody else. Basically, you become a good parent when you become a rebellious son or daughter. And it basically is like when you take life on your own terms and you decide what fits you and what doesn't fit you, and then how you're going to show up differently. But that dynamic is a very hard one to navigate when you do still have that piece of you, even as a grown-up, that wants to please your parent
Right.
and wants to be doing things right and wants to, be on the right path. But when you feel compelled to do something differently because you're showing up as the fierce mama bear for this new
Right.
generation, you do kind of have to reconcile with that. It's hard. So having a parent being so willing to give permission to take on a different path, that's powerful. I bet your son really needed to hear that.
I think that really, all we want for our children is the best.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have such love for them.
Yes.
But that is the epitome of love, to be able to step back and say, number one, to say, I'm sorry. It wasn't intentional, but I'm sorry. Number two, to say, I recognize that you are a divine entity and that you're here on your path. And number three, how can I support you?
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel that you have to be locked into any teachings that I taught you.
Yeah.
You have permission. And it's not necessarily that you have to use that word, but you do have to say to them in some kind of way, you have permission to be the divine being that you're here to be.
Wow.
And anything, I said to my son, anything that I have taught you, anything, I want you to examine it all and make a decision. This fits because I choose it, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, let it go. Let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you that two things. My book, Return to Self, that's what it's all about. Demasking, uh, looking at the labels that you have assumed, looking at the you that you are, that Not the you that you created, but the you that you became because somebody else created you.
Mm-hmm.
So that day in that parking lot signaled a a change in our relationship. Our relationship is strong. My son, I also think that that day signaled a significant change in my son's mental and physical health.
Wow.
He has been changing. He is no longer depressed. And it didn't happen overnight, but just gradually. So he is doing exceptionally well now.
Wow.
And I've learned, and here's evidence of my learning. Just recently, his pet died unexpectedly, and he sent me very cryptic. Um, Anara had a seizure. No, I don't. I'm not feeling well. No, I'm not handling it well. And I'll talk to you later. Now, Anara was like my son's companion, and she was what helped him be stable, right? And she just unexpectedly had this grand seizure,
Oh no.
died instantly. I knew that my heart just knew how much his heart was hurting.
Yeah.
The old me would have picked up that phone and been right in there. The
Mm-hmm.
new me respected the fact that he let me know and that he also said, "No, I'm not well. I'll reach out to you when when I am ready on my terms." And I just stepped back and went into prayer,
Oh wow. That's so
you
hard.
know,
Yeah.
because I respect him in that way.
Uh-huh. And he made it
But that's
through?
major. That's major for
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
because Mama Bear still wants to come in and
Yep.
fix it.
Yes. Yeah. But that fixing can be harmful if we're not allowing them to live out life on life's terms and develop the skills that they need to be
Absolutely.
resilient long term.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, just speaking to that, I think that one of the reasons I think perhaps my son didn't do as well with the military I think that he was more subjective, more yeah, can't get my words together, but that he was more had more of a propensity to have PTSD is because I protected him so much. My
Mm.
son he was a privileged kid.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't exposed to violence, and I mean, he was a mama's boy. He's a big guy, so he tried to be a big guy, but Mama Bear just kind of took control and took over and didn't allow him to develop those muscles, didn't expose him to so much of life that it
Yeah.
turned out he needed to be exposed to in order to develop the resilience. See, it's all about mental and spiritual resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have that. He's got
Yeah.
a kind, gentle heart. He takes on everybody else's energy. Everybody else. He's the one that goes for the bird with the broken wing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So he didn't have the resilience, the skills to protect himself.
Yeah.
But they have to have some failures of their own in order to develop those muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of control what some of those failures are and allow them to experience them. But if they have no experience with any of them, and then you go off into the military or you go off to college or you go off wherever you go, you don't have the skills.
Yeah.
You don't have the skills.
Which
So that would be a
does a
failure.
disservice to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, the knowledge I have and looking back.
Yeah, you do. You have such a powerful perspective of being able to lay it out there of saying here's where my heart was and here's how my intentions were pure and here's where that got disconnected.
Yeah.
And then here's how it played out. And we can learn so much from that because we have the same mama heart. We have the same intentions. We have the same ways of it hurts us so much to see our kids in pain and to see them
Yes.
facing adversity and to see them having to fail. Oh, it's painful.
But
That's why we try to protect it.
we can do little things. Here's an example, and this may be relevant to your listeners, right? Because most parents and children still do the Easter egg thing, right? Um, I remember going to an Easter egg hunt. My son was probably about 4, and I watched it. It was like a community event, and I watched as these parents, with the bigger kids, the parents would go and find the eggs for them,
Oh,
uh,
man.
and because they wanted them to have a lot. And I said to my son, "We have eggs at home. We've got as many eggs as you could possibly even think you might want. If you want eggs here, you must find them on your own, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of the growth process. That's a part of teaching them to navigate life. Yes, it's about eggs, but it's about more than that.
Yeah.
And so I think my son walked away with 3 eggs, and I watched these other kids and they've got all these baskets full of eggs. But my son found each of those eggs on his own, and he was so excited.
Mm-hmm.
I taught my son to ride a bike. That meant he had to learn how to fall.
Yeah.
That meant I had to learn how to, without freaking out, how to, how to let him fall. So
Uh-huh.
I've got some successes. I've got some
Yes.
successes.
Yes.
But those are times that I've seen other parents who are so protective that they don't even allow those little failures to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing about failure, and the research shows that failure creates a growth mindset, because children who fail don't, unless the parents paint it as a bad thing, the children who fail just see it as, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, now I know what doesn't work, so let me see what does work. Those
Right.
children develop greater critical thinking and problem solving skills than the kids who, and they take more chances or more risk, but they take more educated risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because through their experience, they have developed that growth mindset. Whereas a child who has never experienced failure, that child is going to be very limited in their skill set, very limited in their critical thinking, and very safe, play it very safe, and will
Yeah.
not, they won't advance as they might otherwise advance, because they're so afraid to think outside the box.
Right.
In this day and age, we need children who are going to become the leaders to be able to think outside the box.
Yes. That's what we want. Yes. So we have to look at what we want and then look at what's the trajectory to get there, because
And
it's
what
going to
part do
determine
you
what we
play in
do.
it?
Yeah.
What part do you play in it? And how can you ensure? See, here's where you can create success. How can you expose them to experiences that ensure they get the opportunity to develop that growth mindset?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if we don't look at that intentionally, it's just probably not going to happen in the day-to-day flow
Right.
until we look back and say, "Oh yeah, that never happened. I never really exposed them to that. The opportunity's over." Yeah. And that's one of the things that I help families do through parent coaching is identify what are these top 10 values that matter to me that I'm instilling, and then how am I working them back into that day-to-day in that trajectory. And one of the big ones for our family is that idea of adaptability and critical problem solving and growth mindset. And so we worked that way back to, okay, now when they are in first grade, I'm enrolling them in a children's business fair where they have to take ownership of every step of it. And they're probably not going to sell a lot of things, but they'll figure it out. It'll be
Exactly.
so good for them.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, that is so good. That will be great for them,
Yeah.
because that's the kind of mindset and those are the skills that you must have in this 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only going to require more of those skills as
Yes.
time passes rather than less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we only got through one out of your 2 stories. So I will be scheduling a part 2 with you, so that we can continue to build on the other topic. But I'll wrap this one up for today. That way, moms can can be able to get this episode in and not feel intimidated by the length of it. So the question I like to ask every guest that comes on is, how are you the mom that your son needs?
How am I the mom that my son needs? My son and I have a beautiful relationship. And I think I'm the mom that he needs because I've learned to mind my own business. I've learned to ask, what is it that you need from me? How can I support you? I've learned to always support him energetically and spiritually regardless, but to allow him to take the lead when it comes to how he lives his life and whether he wants my advice or not. I will even ask him when he mentions a particular issue, or if I call and just to see how he's doing. I may say, if he's sharing about a problem, I may say, do you want input from me, or do you just want me to listen? Because many times he doesn't want input, and they don't want input. They just, as we do, just need somebody to listen supportively, not with judgment, not with any feedback or input, just to be fully present in the moment and listen. Mm-hmm. So I think that is my greatest achievement right now in terms of being a mom.
Yeah, be proud of that. Absolutely. Good for you. We can learn so much from you that way. Your son is so lucky that you've done all of the work yourself to show up as that person. Yeah. I'm so glad that you have such a good relationship now. I love that.
Thank you.
So how can moms connect with you and your book?
You can find me on Facebook. I'm at Dr. Sue Carter Collins. It's just Dr. no period, Sue Carter Collins. I have presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And my email address is drsuecartercollins@gmail.com.
Perfect. I will link all of that in the show notes for moms to find. But thanks again for all the vulnerability it took to get that story out. We are honored to be able to hold space for hearing it and learning from you. And it takes a lot of bravery to share those tender moments of our past. And I'm just so grateful for your willingness to do it.
It has been my pleasure. You made me cry, but I love you. It was a good cry.
Okay, good. As long as you don't hold it against me, we're good.
No, it was good. It was good.
Okay, well, we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you so much. You take good care.
Oh my goodness, how good was that? It was such a treat to interview her, and there will be a part 2 episode in the future. So always remember that you are the mom that your kids need. Next episode, Leslie McNabb shares her story of navigating a relationship with a partner in a journey of addiction and recovery, and how she sought out her own recovery. Don't forget to grab your gift from me. Go to parentingwholeheartedly.com/emotions to download your workbook teaching you how to walk your kids back to calm. Before you jump off your app though, leave a quick review. It helps other moms find this show. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I believe in you and I'm cheering you on.